Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Cyber Safety News Show. I am Adam Blue, and this is the news show where we look at cybersecurity, how you can best protect yourself, and just to give information on the world of cybersecurity, latest threat attacks that could be going on. For today's show, we're going to go through a number of things, both in terms of malware from China, how the U.S. is going to respond to that, some cyber force provisions they have in place. Also setting new rules for developers that could be mobile apps, etc., just to kind of help curb the access to personal data. And then also in the world of video games, a popular video game that has kind of reemerged now has an attack that's on its players through the use of malware. Also later on in the show, I'll then talk about MFA, how you can better protect yourself, get a better understanding of what MFA or multi-factor authentication is, and some of the apps to familiarize yourself with. First of all, this comes from Newsmax. U.S. hunts for Chinese malware hidden inside essential networks. So the Biden administration is working to find Chinese malware it believes is hidden within networks that control power grids, communication systems, and water supplies that support U.S. military bases, the New York Times reported. The detection of the malicious computer code has raised fears that Chinese hackers have inserted it to disrupt U.S. military operations in the event of a conflict, such as Beijing invading Taiwan. One congressional official told the Times that the malware is basically a ticking time bomb that could allow China to slow or stop American military deployments or resupply operations by cutting the power, communications, and water at U.S. military bases. U.S. officials fear the impact could be much more widespread. However, because that same infrastructure often supplies the homes and businesses of average Americans. According to more than a dozen U.S. officials and industry experts who spoke with the Times, the Chinese malware campaign goes back at least a year before the May report. Likewise, the federal government's effort to find the code and eliminate it has been underway for a while. Well, just some background information on what I would kind of think. When I read things like this, sometimes I don't understand if it's being written for the general audience to read and understand it. When I hear things like Chinese malware campaign and effort to find the code, to me that sounds very much like a script written for a movie where it's not specific because it's just kind of giving a general idea of a threat. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of what you would call malware from China within U.S. systems. Likewise, I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. has some sort of malware code in other countries. And I think really at the end of the day, countries are wanting to spy and see what other countries are up to. So they are putting malware in these systems. And they're not necessarily, as far as we know, when they're state-sponsored, too nefarious. A lot of times the nefarious acts are done by groups or outside state-sponsored attacks. That's not always the case. But with something as is kind of like not as detailed as we're seeing here, I wonder if this is just more of an effort for the U.S. to potentially get maybe more funding to have a bigger kind of cyber security task force. And that's actually what leads us to our next topic. Let me get that open up here. So this is from The Record. The Record is saying Senate opens path for a cyber-focused military branch, right? So, there's multiple branches of the military: Air Force, Marines, Army. There's the Space Force. Now maybe a cyber force. So the possibility of a U.S. cyber force moved one step closer to reality on Thursday after the Senate approved its version of a massive defense policy bill. The $886 billion National Defense Authorization Act passed in a 86-11 vote. The measure said the Academy will conduct an evaluation regarding the advisability of establishing a separate armed force dedicated to operations in the cyber domain and how it would compare in performance and efficacy to the current model. It also contained a prohibition against interference that explicitly warns no DoD personnel may interfere, exert undue influence, or in any way seek to alter the study's findings. Pentagon leaders have resisted the idea of creating an independent cyber service, arguing that U.S. Cyber Command is still maturing and could prompt some of the existing military branches to downgrade the digital mission. So what's very interesting is talking about an armed forces when really when it comes to cybersecurity, that is on a digital front. There's no like physical arms that are occurring. Is the idea then having some sort of like SWAT team that can like move in where they found maybe a data center or some sort of hideout where a lot of hackers are meeting up to carry out some of their missions? And they've talked about that the Pentagon already has a U.S. Cyber Command that if they needed to, they could get military branches involved. I got to say, 886 billion is quite a lot. There are a lot of smaller corporations, organizations around the world that are paying far, 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 far less to secure their own environment. And the fact is that no matter what, cybersecurity threats will always come about. So it's a never-ending cycle. So on one hand, that amount of money, there's not any amount of money that's going to completely keep you safe, but that's a lot of money to pay on this. So I wonder if there's something more to this, and when it comes to the government and what they're spending money on, what they're trying to get put into motion so they can get money for, we don't always know the case. And just like with this previous example with the Chinese malware, it's really a matter of looking for it, trying to find it, but being vigilant and constantly looking for new malware, trying to find new malware. I think, on one hand, it's neat that we're seeing the U.S. Kind of be a little more upfront with trying to curb, cybersecurity threats, just because that is really what is the main threat nowadays. For multiple reasons. Having access into networks, you can shut down operations, or on the other hand, you can get access to personal data to use for selling ads. So there's two ways, and possibly more, that you can go about this. Curious what maybe behind the scenes the U.S. government is seeing that requires them to have a armed cybersecurity force. So that's pretty interesting to see how that plays out. And for things a little more relatable to us that are not in the government, Apple, and this is from the Hacker News, Apple sets new rules for developers to prevent fingerprinting and data misuse. So Apple has announced plans to require developers to submit reasons to use certain APIs in their apps starting later this year with the release of iOS 17 and watch OS 10 to prevent their abuse for data collection. So I think this is a good thing. And this goes far back. Once the digital access occurred either through apps or hardware, companies can then get data from their users, which then they can turn around and sell or use for advertising. There was a time when it came to Facebook and app development on Facebook where they locked down the type of information you could access from the users. I was in digital marketing at the time, helping with consulting with a company that wanted to create an app on Facebook. We saw at the end of the day, the app was just to gather personal information from people. And so Facebook locked that down. A lot of companies are locking that down, but with stronger security measures like biometrics, things that you can use with your fingerprint, it looks like there could be ways where maybe you can get data from that that then can be used in nefarious ways, maybe sold outside the app network. And I think it's really good that Apple is kind of locking that down, because it maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to Apple what happens to a user because of their data. But there are a lot of regulations in place, regulatory compliance that companies need to follow just so they don't get caught up in some legal situation because information got leaked or information got out and it came back to Apple. So very interesting that we're seeing a company like Apple actually do this. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. Once security measures become stronger on different devices, whether that's hardware and software, getting more personal information from you for the purpose of confirming it is you, authenticating you to get into your system, where does that data go? How could these companies be using that? So this is good that this is in place. This is an example of something I think then the government could be talking more about than some sort of cyber armed force. It's having more of regulation on the type of biometrics or personal data that is gathered when using prompts for security to get into different systems. And, not only with apps that have to do on consumer electronics like phones in the App Store, but there's a super, super popular game you've probably heard of called Call of Duty. I'm a gamer myself. I don't play too much Call of Duty nowadays, but this is from Wired. Security news this week: Call of Duty players hit with self-spreading malware. A report from TechCrunch sheds some possible light on the issue of Call of Duty. Players on the old game are being hit with malware that automatically spreads through multiplayer lobbies, according to the publication. Gamers appear to have posted about the malware, finding links to it on online code repositories, and claim it spreads through lobbies from one infected player to another. One anonymous source from the gaming industry said the malware appeared to be a worm. And so how that works is when you're playing a game like Call of Duty, you are connecting to a server with other players. Now, if other players happen to be these bad actors or threat actors, they could manipulate some code on their computer so that when they are connected to this multiplayer lobby that others are in, it could initiate this code sequence, which could then be sending malware to the other players' machines. And so that is a pretty interesting way to go about it, especially a game like Call of Duty. Call of Duty is one of the most popular video games out right now, and this Call of Duty game came out in 2009. So this isn't the re-release, but this is the original, and it's being played a whole lot more than ever. It's still playable and online on Xbox. When it comes to game preservation, Microsoft does a good job of keeping old games available to be played, but this also does give attackers an opportunity to exploit these older games that no longer get security patches. So it's very interesting to see where attackers would now attack something like a game like Call of Duty. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on in the future with this. If games servers are going to continue to be up in some way, and that could be P2P, not necessarily a dedicated server, who's liable for that? Are the video game companies liable to support old systems that they don't make much money off of anymore? Is this more of a personal than responsibility of the player knowing, hey, if you're playing older games, maybe a warning, a TOS that with these older games, there's a potential for some type of malware. Already what happens are hackers, very non-threatening hackers, but more of in a game, getting a leg up on the other players, maybe having invincibility, unlimited running, stuff like that. So this is going to the next level where they're actually infecting the player. Be very interesting to see how that turns out. But to end this episode of the cyber safety news, after going through some news, I like to talk a little bit about something to keep in mind when it comes to general cyber security safety. And that for today's episode is going to be multi-factor authentication. So it is possible you haven't come across this yet, but it is very possible to come across something, whether it's an app you use or the company you work for, where you have to answer a prompt on your phone when you're trying to sign in on your computer or your laptop or on an app. And what that is that's the organization's layer of security to protect an attacker from signing in if they have your username and password. By you having that app or device on you, you can confirm it's you to get in. But sometimes it's not necessarily communicated correctly to everyone what this is. And it almost just seems like just some extra step you got to do. And it's like, oh, I don't have time for that today. But if you ever do come across this, just know that this is for your own good and for your own good of the company. Because if someone happened to get in through your account, they could take down the entire company and it might be your fault. So you might have heard of maybe an app called Duo or Okta or the Microsoft Authenticator. These are different companies that have multi-factor authentication, that have an app that you have to maybe put in a code, answer a phone call, etc. There's different methods of manipulating that app itself to confirm it's you. Over time, we're finding where some are more risky, like the SMS or getting a text message. That's riskier as attackers can actually intercept those text messages. But also that when it comes to the apps themselves, when they're like, here's a code, will pop up on the screen, type that in, that's a lot more secure. It's hard to intercept that. But also for things outside a company, you might have used maybe an app called Twitch, or even Google sometimes asks if you're using Gmail, hey, do you want to set up your multi-factor authentication? So you might use Google Authenticator, or another app I think called Authy, Authy, and there's a few others, but these are ones where you can set up that multi-factor prompt. so that when you're trying to log into something, it gets to you to confirm that it is you that is signing in. Now, one thing about that though is if you accidentally delete one of those apps, you need to sign in anywhere, you have no way to access then that code on that app, you might be out of luck and not be able to get back in. And you'd have to reach out to the company to somehow verify that it's you. Again, these are methods to stop attackers from getting in. And so this is just something I think that should be on the forefront of everyone's mind when it comes to accessing online systems, whether that is for business or for personal use, that we're trying to protect your data. And these companies are trying to protect themselves from users that aren't securing their accounts to get in to their system and effectively maybe take over the company or their systems and lock them down. So yeah, keep that in mind when it comes to multi-factor authentication. And also in the comments, if you have any questions about multi-factor authentication or maybe any suggestions for other people that need to be using it, yeah, throw that down there. It would be good to see what you guys have to say. So, that's about it for this episode of Cyber Safety News. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Cyber Safety News here on the Safety News channel. And I've had a lot of fun doing this. I can't wait to continue to talk about the cyber safety news. There's always cybersecurity news that crops up everywhere. I like to be able to cover that and stay on top of all that stuff. And so to know personally in my life, personal business, what I can do to further protect myself. And because it's not always just the digital access itself. It could be phishing attempts. It could be people trying to trick me. And we will cover that on this show as well. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any comments or suggestions, and we'll talk later.